Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here, back with you on another Lone Star Lawyers. Before we get into this episode, a quick reminder that we just released a new movie verdicts episode this past Friday. Robert Callahan and I do a deep dive into The Lincoln Lawyer. So be sure to check that out. It is in your feed right now. If you want to contact me or I can help you in any way, please email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. You can also tweet at Daniel Hare or send me a message on LinkedIn. Okay, today is another Monday Mentors episode where we visit with a Texas lawyer with an established practice and ask them to share advice on how you can grow as a lawyer and reach your career goals. Today, we are going to be billing you double because we are joined by two outstanding lawyers, Josh Fogelman and Aaron von Flatern. Josh and Aaron are the founding partners of Fogelman von Flatern, a plaintiff's personal injury firm in Austin. Both Josh and Aaron are Texas Super Lawyers Rising Stars and members of the prestigious $1 Million Advocates Forum. So with that as an introduction, let's jump into our conversation with Josh and Aaron. Thanks for being with us today on a Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. All right, Josh, Aaron, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us, Daniel.
Happy to be here.
Well, as we were talking just beforehand, the audience has heard a little bit about you going in here, but would love to hear from you all just about your firm and what you all are doing, what you're all about, and kind of what makes you unique. So, Aaron, why don't you maybe just start and just kind of tell us about the firm and about your role in it, and start with that.
Yeah, so Josh Fogelman and I started FVF Law about 5 years ago. It's a unique personal injury law firm in Austin, Texas that started out as just us working hard and trying to make our clients happy, and started to turn into something kind of special in that we started to get some really good reviews from our clients, and we hit upon this concept of people should have high expectations for their lawyers, especially personal injury lawyers, when you consider how severely their lives have been impacted by some of these catastrophic cases. And so we started to try to tailor the law firm or make it in the image of some of the big, good companies out there that are giving great customer service. Some of those like Apple that are just delivering a convenient, easy to use service that's credible, transparent, and is mission driven. So that sort of snowballed, and we grew from there. And now we're kind of getting our new lawyers to understand that concept as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. And I'll, Josh, if you want to talk about this, just listening to Aaron talk about that, who you kind of studied and modeled the firm after is pretty interesting and unique. I'm not sure I've heard another firm describe their market research in that same way. What did you find as you were looking at some of those companies and the customer service they offered and all that you could adapt to the law firm environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are at least three major companies that Aaron and I have both had personal experience with that really struck a chord with us as far as the way that they are not only branded, but how they stand behind what their brand actually signifies. And the three major ones that I could name would include like Nordstrom, for example. Frost Bank is an outstanding example. Southwest Airlines would be another one. And I think the common thread behind all of those companies is that they are customer-centric to the core. They have a mission. They're not afraid to espouse what that mission is exactly, and they go above and beyond time and time again to provide customer service that is in accordance with that mission. And so we believe that was a great philosophy upon which to build our law firm in a sector that really desperately needed that attention.
Yeah, yeah. What's maybe something that if I'm a potential client with a plaintiff's firm, and I'm, maybe interviewing plaintiff's attorneys or kind of looking around, what might I notice, or as I get into it, what would I notice that this is like, the Nordstrom of law firms, or what would be something that would stand out to a client as they experience that?
Well, one of the things that we found really important, you have to put yourself in the shoes of someone who actually has been hurt. For someone who's not a lawyer, it is even something that seems as trivial as a traffic accident can be extraordinarily confusing and disruptive. And one of our missions is to make sure that anybody who calls us is going to get the time and attention to get a thorough education about what their rights and options are, so that at a minimum, even if we know that we're not going to hire them on as a client, or they're not going to hire us, or even if ultimately we're going to advise them that they don't really need a lawyer, we will take the time to make sure that they understand what choices they have and how to put themselves in the best position possible to not get taken advantage of. So that attention to detail right at the outset, from the first interaction forward, is one of the ways that we pride ourselves in providing that type of customer service that we've built the firm on.
That's awesome. Well, Aaron, I want to transition a little bit and have you talk about to our audience, which is mostly younger lawyers, and looking back at your first few years in practice, what stands out as something that you learned as a young lawyer that has carried with you and helped you throughout your career?
I think the thing I learned was actually before I got out of law school was this concept of when in command, take charge, and know that when someone hands you a file, that's a client, and that client's depending on you to either get it done or figure it out. If you don't know what you're doing, that's okay. You can ask a lot of questions. This is what they trained you to do in law school. You need to be beating down the door of the senior partner in the firm if that's what it takes to get the answers, but also go to the books. They trained you to research, get as many answers as you can first, because the worst thing that's going to happen is you'll look up the wrong law and learn something that you didn't know anyway, and then go find out the right answer from the partner if that's how it works. But take it and run with it, and don't, you wouldn't want a waiter to come to your table and ask you if it was okay to put your plate down in front of you for your dinner. It's their table. It's their restaurant. They know what they're doing. They're putting it in front of you. They're giving, and as lawyers, we're giving clients advice. We're not wishy-washy. We're not saying, gee, it's up to you. I don't know, maybe you ought to take that settlement or something like that. We've got a point of view. And if you're a lawyer, you have to find a way to form that point of view and then start to drive the bus instead of being a passenger.
I love that restaurant example. That's a good picture of what that looks like. Josh, how about for you? Anything?
I learned that nothing in this line of work is given and everything is taken. I see a lot of people in the personal injury community that will take an approach of complacency towards getting a case resolved and wait for an insurance company to bring an offer, or wait for time to sort of allow the case to work itself out. And something that I learned early on is that that's just not the appropriate way to practice this line of work.
Right.
That attention to detail and tenacity are the types of characteristics that separate the great lawyers from the good lawyers in this line of work, and the good lawyers from the bad lawyers in this line of work.
Right.
So, I kind of picked up on that watching some of the people that I admire practice, and it's something that has also helped shape the way that we train our associates and the way that we practice law, of course.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Is there anything that you learned later on in practice that you wish someone had told you when you were first getting started, or maybe first few years in practice? Anything that comes to mind is, man, that would have been helpful to know as a second-year lawyer. I wish I would have learned it before I was a sixth-year lawyer. Aaron?
So if you have the opportunity to actually decide which cases you work on and have some kind of hand in case selection, I would say it's be careful what you wish for. And, sometimes if you're an injury lawyer, for example, you might be interested in getting a big catastrophic case. And then it lands in your lap, and if you find out there's no insurance coverage, no assets, a client who's depending on you to walk them through Texas Medicaid and nursing home coverage, and maybe even getting a will together for their family, and this stuff that you never thought you were going to have to get into, on top of not making any money on the case.
Right.
So, case selection, I think, is really critical in our business. Most young lawyers don't have very much of a hand in that. And so I think intellectual curiosity is probably the best advice I could give them, which is you can't just assume the case is going to talk to you and tell you what it is. You got to read the whole thing and find out where the nooks and crannies are, and think critically as you read it, not passively, and just keep asking those questions until you are solving problems and getting out in front of things, so you're not constantly getting blindsided and surprised. I mean, as a lawyer, you don't want to be living in a constant state of surprise. You want to, as I said before, you want to be the one pushing the ball forward. You start the fires and let the other guys deal with it on the other side.
Right.
So it's just sort of a mindset of, for lack of a better word, commit. Commit to it wholly.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, Josh, thinking about associates that you've hired and worked with over the years, what are some ways that an associate can make a positive impression on you as their supervisor, as their partner? What stands out for you?
I think a desire to learn and a desire to become a master of the craft is something that can be identified and recognized fairly early on. When you have the type of associate that isn't just taking the advice that you give them and executing what you tell them to do, but is sitting there and critically analyzing why you're giving the advice and asking you difficult questions about your rationale, that is a really good indicator that that lawyer is someone who's prepared to dig deep and really wants to understand the hows and the whys of what they're doing. And usually we found that translates into a certain type of passion that's necessary, at least to be exceptional in this line of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, you've talked a little bit about having that intellectual curiosity. Anything that you comes to mind for you in terms of ways that associates can impress you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to start a business with Josh is that I saw a quality in Josh in that if you were like moving your apartment, and you asked for his help, even if he had like some plans that he was really looking forward to, he would secretly cancel those plans and show up at your apartment with the truck. And
right.
Those people in your life, you just kind of know them. And you want to be that person to the law firm. You want to be the team member who is saying yes to helping their coworkers. And also you want to be someone who's a doer. If I see someone kind of lingering in the hallways pontificating on the law, but not actually like on the phone trying to push their cases forward, they may be like a friendly person that people like, but what I want is for their clients to like them.
Yeah.
Because, we got to be nice to our clients, and they've put a lot of trust in us. So yeah. I want to see that activity, just being an active person. And of course, be the squeaky wheel, as we've already kind of talked about. If you don't know something, that is 100% fine, unless you fail to go get help.
Yeah. Yeah.
To Aaron's point, a red flag is an associate who's not present in your office asking questions at all, because there's just so many nuances, really, of any area of practice, that if you don't have someone who's completely green, picking your brain, and willing to come in and disrupt you and pick your brain, even
right.
though they think it's going to be inconvenient or frustrating, that's usually a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was going to ask that actually. So, trying to figure out, if those are the positives, what are some possible negative things that an associate could do? And so, not asking questions, not showing that curiosity, not wanting to learn sounds like a big one for you all. Well,
yeah, absolutely.
And thinking about too, as you've watched maybe associates develop and become, seasoned lawyers, whether it's within your firm or maybe gone on somewhere else and establish their own practices and become more experienced lawyers. Is there a trait or a characteristic or something that you've seen that is common among those that have at least been most successful coming through your world in the last 5-10 years?
Yeah,
Aaron,
so
you want to
I
take
don't know
it?
if you're directing it to me, but I will say that there's, the trait that I look for, like I said before, is just that intellectual curiosity, and also conscientiousness, empathy. We need people that, and I'm sorry to give you multiple answers here, but we need people that are empathetic towards our clients, and somebody who is, for example, really careless with their email hygiene, such that it's confusing to people, what it is they're doing, and they're sort of generating email storms because of the sort of vague questions and or over including who's on the to line and who's on the. Those little things don't really matter that much, but they're annoying to your colleagues. And if you're not the kind of person who knows that they're being annoying, that's a problem. Someone who knows that. I mean, you need to have empathy towards the senior partners as well, because they're working on. You may not see them working around the clock at their houses until midnight, but they're definitely busy on the firm. And just assuming that they have nothing better to do than to help you with something, and you haven't bothered to learn the actual pathways within the law firm to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know that your senior partner is not your travel manager who's going to book your flight for you, for example. Definitely just kind of learn the little things so that you can really have a streamlined path to learning the law and learning the practice.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Well, Josh, assuming that it's, I know everyone's in a different maybe situation depending on where they're practicing in the firm, but assuming it's encouraged in their firm, how would you give advice to an associate who is thinking about starting to build their own business and start doing business development and developing their own clients? What are some tips for young lawyers as they start to go down that path?
Well, I think in my experience, at least, business development is really a multi-prong approach. I mean, business development starts at a very early age, in my opinion, and it's based on the type of character that you present to the people that are going to be your future colleagues and future peers. So that's sort of the long play. I mean, it starts in law school, but I mean, really, it starts before that. But as far as a direct correlation towards actually getting consistent business in the door, what I have seen be probably the most reliable path towards being able to secure new business is to become friends and become involved with your local organizations that are specifically tailored to the area of practice that you want to start the business in. What I found is that those local organizations, when you are an active and a valued member of those organizations and they catch wind that you're wanting to go out on your own and start your own business, they're going to bend over backwards to start sending you cases. And you might not love them. They might not be the best cases in the world, but that's how you learn and that's how you start. So just getting involved with the local communities, the local bar and the local organization specific to your practice area, I think is a must.
Yeah. Yeah. Aaron, did you have something you were going to add to that?
Business development is everything Josh just said. I guess the thing I would add is if you want to be a trial lawyer, then you ought to work on trying cases, because that will really get your name out there. If you go it's one step at a time. All cases are easy if you just take it one step at a time and meet your deadlines and show up to court, having thought about your client's case and be prepared to appeal to the jurors as a person, not as some kind of robot. You just tell them, why you win. That's a special thing. Once it starts to work, you get some momentum, and then people start talking about it, and you can share it in the community, and other people start looking up to you and sending you stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how that works, right? You do good work, and somehow...
And that can work with appellate work, too. I mean, it's not necessarily always trial work, but it definitely works.
No, absolutely. Well, kind of thinking about now when you've gone about hiring associates, and we've worked together on some of this in the past, and so I'm a little bit familiar, but for folks listening, what are some ways that you all go about identifying potential associates who will be a good fit within your firm and really gel with your team? I know that's important, the culture that you're building there. How do you go about doing that? Josh, want to...
So I'll jump in, I guess, and just say we can work with anybody that's got drive, intellect, and empathy. If we have those three characteristics, it's going to be a good fit, pretty much. Missing any one of those would probably be devastating to us. But that's what I look for. And sometimes I got to be honest, I like seeing things on resumes that are not the normal. I like to see that somebody, maybe took some manual labor job in construction, or did something where I can tell they've got this background where they're going to be able to relate to our clients and to me, and so not just be the kind of cookie cutter lawyer. So that's always something I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Aaron. I think to touch on your point, Daniel, firm culture is very important for us. And so when we're interviewing new clients, that's a big focus, is talking about what our mission is and talking to our interviewees about experiences in their life that will help us identify whether they're really aligned with that mission. And some of the kind of correlating characteristics that we've seen, as Aaron pointed out, is just sort of an interesting and unique and diverse history that kind of shows a willingness to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work that is necessary to do an exceptional job consistently for your clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Is there anything, Josh, that as you're reviewing a resume or a cover letter that is just an automatic, red flag or just a pet peeve or something that you're really looking at weeding out, based on something in documents that are submitted to you?
Absolutely. I mean, the old adage, you've got to have your resume polished. You can't have it full of typographical errors. There's no excuse to walk into an interview or to submit a resume that's got formatting errors or typographical errors or grammatical mistakes. Take the time and go and work with someone to get that done. At the end of the day, what's interesting about it is it doesn't really matter if a person is capable of doing that on their own, but just presenting a resume that's polished and well put together at least demonstrates that they recognize the things that are important versus the things that are maybe a little bit less important.
Yeah.
And, I guess this is a little bit different too for candidates that might be coming fresh out of law school. But one of the things that we try to avoid, or it's a red flag, I should say at least, is someone who's bounced around a lot. That's usually, it can be an indicator of a larger problem, someone who's having a difficult time finding a fit, or maybe someone who doesn't take the job as seriously as they should. So we always keep an eye out for that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, and I can add on to that, which is, I would like to say that if you bounced around as a young lawyer, sometimes that's an indication that you're being introduced to the legal profession, and it is full of, it's varied, right? Some firms, with no secret, there are some firms that are just not fun to work for. And so I'm sort of empathetic when I see someone has left one of those firms, but I'm also looking at it and saying, I need somebody who gets over obstacles. And that's the first one you've hit. you got a terrible boss, you got an unfair culture, you got whatever it is. And I need to see that you're the kind of person that will stick in there at least, a significant amount of time so you can make your plan. The worst thing to see is somebody who leaves a place like that and didn't have a plan, for what's next. Right. And so I look at that and it's like, well, did you really think that through? Because every lawyer who does what we do gets to a point in their life where they're not working 90-hour weeks or something like that. But everyone who has gotten high up in the ranks in a law firm can remember a time when they were up at 2 a.m. working on a motion.
Sure.
And if you are quitting because they're making you do that, I get it. It hurts. It sucks. But this is the one time in your life you got to put up with it and then get past it. There are other people digging ditches. You have the privilege of having a law degree. Just stick it out a little longer and then come to it.
Yeah, that's good. Sticking with you, Aaron, as you moved into like an interview phase with a candidate who's like on the lateral side, maybe a few years experience and not dealing maybe with the bouncing around issue, but just making a move after however many years at another place, and you're going through an interview process with them. What's maybe something that you're looking for in that interview? What's something that's a kind of like we were just talking about, maybe a pet peeve or something that you are concerned about if you see it in an interview?
I look for flexibility, someone who can come into a room and maybe it's filled with 4 people who are going to interview them at once, or maybe it's just one, but they're kind of okay with either because they have an adaptable personality. They remain calm. They're still deep breathing. They might be a little nervous, but certainly we have to see evidence of a bit of confidence. And if you really care about the thing you're talking about, like your career, you really shouldn't have a hard time talking with people about it, right? So if we get into an interview and it's just painful to get answers to questions because the person hasn't really considered why they're going down this path of becoming a professional, which is a lifelong commitment to mastery, right? Mm-hmm. And if they haven't figured out that there's some big questions in there and they're just there because they thought they're supposed to be lawyers, it's hard. We just don't have a connection. And that's what I look for, is an instant connection with somebody.
Yeah. Josh, how about for you in an interview? What's something that you're keeping an eye out for?
I like to see at least a basic understanding of the fundamentals and an ability to think critically. One of the things that Aaron does a really good job at in many of our interviews, particularly for more experienced candidates, is he'll pose a hypothetical. And that gives us an opportunity to learn whether or not that candidate has spent their career up to that point digging a little bit deeper and trying to learn just the basics of how a personal injury case is built. And it's really, honestly, it's surprising to see some of the responses that you get that indicate that some of the candidates are just doing as they're told instead of doing what they should be doing, or at least learning what they need to be learning.
Right.
It's excusable if you're told what to do and you're going to do what your boss tells you to do, but just taking somebody's word for what is the truth and what is good advice isn't the same as digging in and learning the options and doing some critical thinking and trying to understand creative problem-solving solutions. Yeah. So it's good to see someone who's able to think on their feet and has demonstrated that they've gone a little bit deeper to understand some of those basics.
Yeah, well, that's really good, Aaron. I need to ping you up later for some interview tips and the hard questions to throw at people. It sounds like I want to know what some of these hypos are.
Yeah. Well, usually it's something that just happened that day, and what I really enjoy the creativity of our work. I enjoy having someone come to me with something that's like an unsolvable riddle, and because I'm in this world, I can see parts of the playing field that they can't, and I'm moving pieces around, and all of a sudden I've got a solution for them, and it feels awesome. And I'd like to see somebody who kind of at least has a spark of curiosity about the question and maybe comes up with something creative as an answer. I don't always expect them to get the exact right answer that it took me 20 years to figure out how to advise them on.
Yeah, no, I get it. You're being fair, but yet giving them an opportunity to impress you. Yeah. Well, what's going on just in the personal injury space? What's going on in your practice area that you're either maybe excited about or concerned about? Kind of where are things headed in your world of personal injury, plaintiff's work, and specifically if there's something going on in Austin where you all are headquartered? Josh, what's going on in the world right now for you?
Well, I know that one of the concerns that we have, and I don't know that it's necessarily a concern, and interestingly, it's kind of one of these what's good for the world isn't necessarily good for the practice of law, but something that we're keeping our eye on is autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
Trying to see where that's going to go and to see how that might impact, kind of what the bread and butter of most personal injury practices are. Obviously here in Austin, the city is just absolutely booming. And despite the fact that vehicles continue to get safer, we continue to have more than enough car wrecks going on in our community, unfortunately. But we're keeping our eye on at least that. And, there's always kind of the mass tort of the day that'll grab your attention. I think more on like a purely legal level, probably the hottest button topic in our actual practice of law deals with uninsured motorist coverage. There's a really big problem with the way that the Texas Supreme Court has issued some opinions interpreting underinsured motorist coverage policies that have opened the door to abusive tactics by insurance companies. And I don't say that just as a biased personal injury lawyer. Right. I say that as a consumer and as a human being. And I see it every day that desperately needs some attention. Our firm is kind of leading the charge, doing our best to lead the charge in trying to secure some judicial fixes to some of these abusive tactics, and hopefully, we'll see some sort of a legislative change. But we have had a lot of focus on those issues.
Gotcha. That's good stuff. Well, thanks for sharing that. Well, we're about to wrap up our time. We've got some rapid fire questions coming up here in just 1 second. But before I get to those, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you think would be important to share with young lawyers out there getting going here, first few years of practice, something that we haven't touched on or that's on your mind that you'd want them to know?
I know that a lot of lawyers coming out of law school might not have a lot of direction about where to go. And something that I always try to communicate when I've got an audience of lawyers in front of me is don't discount personal injury law. It's an incredibly challenging, rewarding, and gratifying area of practice. If you take your job seriously, you have a real opportunity to make a meaningful difference in people's lives instead of just moving money around. And it can bring a lot of joy. So don't discount that. Keep an open mind when you're thinking about what to do and what you really want to accomplish with the law license that, as Aaron said, you're so privileged to have.
Yeah. And I think that's good for people that have been out practicing a few years and maybe haven't quite found their niche. They like litigation, like trial work, whatever. Absolutely, I think that's great. Well, thank you guys so much for being here again. Really appreciate you sharing. We'll end with these quick answer here questions. I'll ask a question, maybe go Aaron and then Josh, and that'll keep us in line here. So Aaron, if you're ready, what's one trait or characteristic that you most want to see in an associate?
Courage.
Reliability.
Awesome. What habit has been key to your success?
Channeling anxiety into productivity.
Ooh.
Reliability.
Favorite app or productivity tool?
OneNote.
The good old-fashioned to-do list.
There you go. All right. And of course, the most important, favorite legal movie?
My Cousin Vinny.
Oh, yes.
100%.
Okay.
100% agree.
No question. That is the best legal movie.
Well,
we don't have to talk anymore.
Well, you probably don't know this on the show. Every now and then we're doing deep dives into legal movies. And so we're building the list. And actually, the first one out of the gate is my cousin Vinny. So
outstanding.
It's the correct choice.
So there you go. But Josh, Aaron, thank you all again. We really appreciate you being with us. I know our audience gained a lot from hearing from you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel. It was great.
All right. My thanks again to Josh Fogelman and Aaron von Flatern for joining us on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do two things for me? Number one, would you subscribe so you don't ever miss an episode and it's just right there for you? And then secondly, would you let your friends and colleagues in the Texas legal community know about the show so that we can serve as many of you as possible? If you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, don't forget to email me directly, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget Movie Verdicts with Robert Callahan and me. We are breaking down The Lincoln Lawyer, and that is in your feed right now. So please go and check that out. Next Monday, we will have another Monday Mentors episode, so come back for that as well. All right, well, thank you so much to all of you for listening to the show and to this episode. We appreciate being with us on this episode of Lone Star Lawyers. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we will talk to you next time.